Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching the Boom Political Vigilante, folks. Thank you, citizens of Gotham, for tuning in. And we've been demonetized for over 2 years. You can see scrolling below ways to support our show: Patreon, Rockfin, Venmo. But also, March 2nd, my new comedy special, Manifested, will be dropping on the All Things Comedy YouTube channel. All Things Comedy is a podcast network and production company that's owned by Bill Burr and Al Madrigal. And so it's a thing by comics for comics. It's very, very, very cool. So check that out March 2nd. It's called Manifested. It's at the All Things Comedy YouTube channel. But today I want to talk about, we've talked a lot about, we just hit the 1-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia did invade illegally. I'm not in favor of this invasion. I don't like what Russia is doing. And I also know that I don't believe the one-sided narrative that comes out of the West that, oh, we were all just minding our own business and Russia went crazy. I'm sorry. I've shown you videos. We helped destabilize Ukraine in 2014 when we backed the coup to get a new leader in there. And we've been pushing Russia into this. Honestly, it goes back to 1998. A bill was passed to expand NATO eastward, and we did that. And Russia, and there were senators, this is before Putin was even became president, where they were like, Russia's not going to like this. And I keep talking about we've surrounded Russia and China with American military bases. And we're trying to put a NATO base in Ukraine. And so this is, and we're using Ukraine as pawns. This is what America has done time and time again. So most recently now, Zelensky gave a speech and he shared this.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war. And they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about. And they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war. And they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about. And they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing.
So did you just hear that? Now, this isn't in a longer, there's a larger context in which he's speaking. And okay, we can talk about that this is basically a speech he's giving. And prior to that speech, he was like saying, if this war keeps getting worse, then America will have to send its sons and daughters. But this is being echoed by the U.S. State Department. And the thing that it's not, that these reports don't show, is there's massive anti-NATO protests in Europe that just happened like days ago, over the weekend. Huge they're like, they don't want to be a part of this. And when you hear this, and you've heard American politicians say like, well, we might have to fight this evil enemy. And let's just look at some of the responses to this. So it seems to be addressing a potential consequences of a hypothetical situation that was presented before the starting point of this clip. Another viewpoint, maybe the U.S. government should back up their narrative in time to explain why Russia invaded instead of gaslighting Americans and pretending Russia was unprovoked to get worse. Exactly. I don't like what Russia did, but two things can exist. We provoked them. And then somebody put this map. Look at this. Russia, not America, not our border, also not America. No, not here, none of our concern, right? And now, are you willing? Ukraine is not a war, but a cleanup operation. Well, now that's just getting, it's getting crazy. But I want to show you this because here's something. So America, are and everybody out there with this, I support Ukraine. Are you ready to go to war? Are you ready to send your children to war in Ukraine? I mean, we've talked about, and I'm going to do another segment on Seymour Hersh showed that the Nord 2 pipeline was blown up by the Americans, and our media is not covering it. But this is how this goes. I mean, our Americans, as Chris Hedges said when he was on the show, that Gore Vidal made the statement in the 70s that America is called the United States of Amnesia. So are we going to start sending sons and daughters to another proxy war? Did we forget about, where was it? Afghanistan, Iraq? Did we forget about that? Well, I'm going to tell you about another war that happened a while ago. And here's LBJ, President Johnson, in, I believe, 64. This is his opinion on America sending young men. Of course, women weren't drafted, still aren't, young men to war in Vietnam.
We are not about to send American boys 9,000 or 10,000 miles away from home to do what Asian boys ought to be doing for themselves.
Right? That was 1964. And then, I don't know if you know much about history, then it kind of changed. Here we go. This is 67.
Arriving to make known his new decisions on Vietnam to a highly tensed Washington press conference, which is attended by his family, President Johnson explains the reasons for his actions in these historic words.
We intend to convince the communists that we cannot be defeated by force of arms or by superior power. They're not easily convinced. In recent months, they have greatly increased their fighting forces and their attacks and the numbers of incidents. I have asked the commanding general, General Westmoreland, what more he needs to meet this mounting aggression. He has told me, and we will meet his needs. I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested. This will make it necessary to increase our active fighting forces by raising the monthly draft call from 17,000 over a period of time to 35,000 per month, and for us to step up our campaign for voluntary enlistments. Once the communists know, as we know, that a violent solution is impossible, then a peaceful solution is inevitable. I've spoken many times of our objectives in Vietnam. So has the government of South Vietnam. Hanoi has set forth its own proposals. We are ready to discuss their proposals and our proposals and any proposals of any government whose people may be affected. For we fear the meeting room no more than we fear the battlefield. And in this pursuit, we welcome and we ask for the concern and the assistance of any nation and all nations.
So there's LBJ saying in 1964, we're not going to send American boys over to do what Asian boys should be doing. And then 3 years later, we're sending an additional 50,000. So as he said, that we already had 75,000 troops in Vietnam in 1967, and he sent an additional 50,000. I believe the final America lost roughly 58,000 service members, mostly men because it was an all-male draft. Women weren't drafted. There were some nurses that volunteered to go over there, and they died, but it was mostly men. And 1 million Vietnamese. 1 million Vietnamese died. So we keep saying, oh, we don't want to have another Vietnam. Well, we had one. We had one in Afghanistan. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. This is what the military-industrial complex wants, these never-ending wars. It's not even about winning or losing in Afghanistan. It was about just never-ending war. And now we've got this new one. Look, we've already sent $120 billion. We're sending tanks over there. What's next is American service members going over there to die. Are you ready to go? Are you ready to sign up and go fight the evil Russians? Are you ready to line up with people, some of whom, like the Azov Brigade, are neo-Nazis fighting with the Ukrainians? Again, I don't think Russia is some bunch of heroes or anything like that, but one of the things in Russia that we don't really hear in our media, they call this war the denazification of Ukraine. And Russia is sending propaganda to its citizens as well, but so are we. And this is pretty, I mean, so Zelensky, when Russia invaded, Zelensky ordered all men under the age of 60 to stay and fight. Women and children could leave, but men under the age of 60 could stay and fight. Are you ready to be drafted, America? Are you ready for that? Anybody with a Ukrainian flag as their avatar, are you ready to go fight over there? You ready to go get in some tanks and fight in a battlefield in the cold and the snow? And you ready to do that? Spend the next 2 years of your life in a battlefield in Europe? You ready for that? So, as I say in my new comedy special, Manifest It, which comes out March 2nd on All Things Comedy, I say, you want war to end? Get rich kids to go fight wars instead of working class kids. Because that's what that's saying, is just working class kids. It won't be rich kids. It's not going to be Ivanka Trump and Hunter Biden are not going to be neck deep in the shit in Kiev. It ain't going to be them. It's not going to be Donald Trump Jr. and Chelsea Clinton going over there. It's not going to be Obama's daughters or Bush's daughters fighting in that war. It won't be. It won't be. It'll be you. It'll be your kids. So I'm opposed to this. And America and its media refuse to acknowledge how awful we are and how we have pushed Russia into this. We helped ramp this up because it's good for business, man. When you send $120 billion in aid, defense contractors are making profit off of this. That's why everyone was mad when Biden got us out of Afghanistan. And I don't like how Biden did it, but I'm glad we're ultimately out of Afghanistan. But it just showed that was a waste. That was a 20-year waste. 4 presidents from both political parties spent $3.5 trillion over 20 years to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. And they just want to do that again. They just want this to be another never-ending war in Ukraine, and Americans are fighting in the battlefield and this and that. And so I would say we need to do this. Americans all need to do this fight. Are there Russian bases in Canada? Are there Chinese bases in Mexico? In the Caribbean? No. We have no foreign bases in our hemisphere. And yet we surround Russia and we surround China, and then we go, wow, they're acting so provoked. We're basically the guy that comes up and pokes you in the chest and pokes you in the chest and pokes you in the chest. And when finally somebody goes, stop it, and they smack you, we go, oh, they're crazy. They're violent and mean. We're the hypocrites. We're the empire causing problems. And this has been documented. So, yeah. Eisenhower warned us against the military-industrial complex, and here we are. And now Zelensky's saying Americans are going to have to come join him and fight in Ukraine. And our sanctions against Russia have really only hurt Western Europe. And I'll cover in a separate video how Seymour Hersh has shown evidence that America blew up the Nord Pipeline, because it made no sense for Russia to blow up a revenue stream. It didn't make any sense. So America is the problem, and we have to call it out from within. So Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for supporting what we do. And there's a long history of lying to the American people about a war that eventually is just about ramping it up. Because wars are good for business. The central banks make money from war. The military-industrial complex makes money. Politicians make money. The media makes money. War is good for, it's good ratings. So, and why isn't our media covering all of the NATO, anti-NATO protests in Europe? Millions of people are hitting the streets. Why aren't they covering that? Yeah. And Russia has WMDs. Are we really wanted to provoke them into World War III? Because guess what happens if World War III happens? We're all dead. It's over. Is that what we want to do? Get into World War III? And as I've shown you before, the defense industry has spent so much money. When people say, oh, we would have had, it would have been the same, or if Trump was president, we wouldn't have had these wars. No. Let me show you, folks. I've shown you this before, and I'll show it again before we end this. This is from OpenSecrets.org, which I highly recommend you go to. And I just searched Defense Industry 2020 recipients. You look there, there's Donald Trump, 2.7 million, and then there's Joe Biden, 3.1 million. There's Bernie with 800,000. So they hedged their bets, even with Bernie. They knew whoever's in there, we own them. We own them. They spent $49 million total over all candidates in 2020. That's why every time there's no debate on the floor about increasing the military budget. There's no debate on the floor of the Senate or the House about sending the billions of dollars to Ukraine. There's no debate on it at all. They paid for it. That's what this is. They paid to get politicians in both parties to just go, yep, we need war, we need war, we need war. So we're spending more money to Ukraine, and now Zelensky wants us to send our own children to die there, while there's tent cities in every American metropolis in the country. Every city has homeless encampments. Every single city. All over America, coast to coast, red state, blue state, doesn't matter. Somebody like, oh, the red states don't have it. Well, because some of the red cities, the mayor or governor will just like push them out of town and arrest them, but they're still there. So this is America, folks. We spend more money on war than we do on our own citizens. We can't have healthcare for Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. We couldn't get free healthcare. In the middle of a pandemic, we couldn't get free healthcare. We can't even get student debt forgiveness. Like maybe 10 grand, that's still being debated. But war. Everybody gets war, whatever you need. Tanks, bombers, billions of dollars in aid, trillions of dollars to the defense industry. Right? Are your PPP or SBA loans being forgiven? Are you a small business owner? No, they're not. The big Wall Street companies get their loans forgiven, but not you. Because how are we going to pay for it? Oh, there's no money for that. There's money for war in Ukraine. There's money for Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, the endless wars. There's money. There's for endless wars. And the homelessness in America is an avoidable tragedy, but we don't want to spend the money on it. We just want to spend the money on war. File the money, connect the dots, get the truth, and shave your knuckles for justice. Thanks for watching the show, everybody. Boom. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood. And go to GrahamElwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a P.O. box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.